Welcome to a Legendarium special about the starving time, cannibalism at Jamestown Colony. In this episode, we will learn about the desperate early days of the first English-speaking colony in North America. Jamestown, the first permanent English colony in North America, was founded in May 1607 by 104 settlers who arrived aboard 3 ships, the Susan Constant, the Discovery, and the Godspeed. They founded their colony on a narrow peninsula in the James River. Within 2 weeks of their arrival, Native American warriors nearly overran the settlement, killing a teenage boy with an arrow to the thigh. After frightening off the war party with cannon fire from a nearby ship, the settlers built a wooden fort, a storehouse, a church, and several houses in the river valley. Unfortunately, the settlers chose a disease-ridden, bug-infested swamp island with no source of fresh water to live in. Before long, the Jamestown settlers suffered greatly from hunger and disease, most caused by salty water laced with naturally occurring arsenic. Within the first 9 months, bad water and disease whittled down the colony's population from 104 to 38. During that first year, survivors buried the corpses in unmarked grave shafts within the fort to prevent the Powhatan Native Americans from finding out that so many of the settlers died. Surviving settlers relied on trade with local Native American tribes made through Captain John Smith's negotiations with Chief Powhatan. The well-known story of how Pocahontas, daughter of Chief Powhatan, saved Captain John Smith's life very likely did not happen, at least not the way most have heard it. The 12-year-old Pocahontas likely did come to the camp, but at the time she would have been too young to play a role in events to come. Throughout 1609, the Virginia Company sent a steady supply of settlers to Jamestown to shore up their investment. Some men came of their own choosing to found farms they could not hope to have back home in England. However, many others came against their will. The city of London rounded up its beggars and forced them onto ships. The authorities even kept some adolescent thieves and ne'er-do-wells in jail so they would not try to flee before being sent across the ocean. In October 1609, an accidental explosion forced Smith to return to England. He would never return to Virginia. The colony's new governor, Thomas Gates, became shipwrecked on the island of Bermuda along with essential supplies. Discipline soon broke down. Indigenous women, unlike those back in England, tended to walk around topless during the hot and humid summers. Englishmen, raised in a culture that often ignored rape, took that as an invitation to assault the women. Unsurprisingly, this triggered a furious response from Chief Powhatan and his warriors, who besieged Jamestown Fort. They ambushed and killed any man who left the fort to hunt or forage, so 300 men crammed into the fort for safety. Over the winter that followed, the situation for the remaining Jamestown colonists grew desperate. They began killing and eating their horses to survive, and later moved on to dogs, cats, and finally vermin like rats and snakes. In time, the settlers resorted to cannibalism. George Percy, who served as governor of Jamestown during the starving time, wrote, "Nothing was spared to maintain life and to do those things which seem incredible, as to dig up dead corpses out of graves and to eat them. And some have licked up the blood which hath fallen from their weak fellows." In addition to Percy's writings, 5 other accounts also refer to cannibalism at Jamestown during the starving time. Former Governor Percy told one story about a man who murdered his pregnant wife and then began salting her flesh to eat later. When the other colonists found him, Governor Percy ordered the offender burned at the stake. The 1994 Jamestown Rediscovery Project found skeleton fragments that belonged to a girl around the age of 14 in the cellar of Jamestown Fort. Anthropologist Douglas Owsley found that men cut up her skull, lower jaw, and leg bones with a cleaver and a knife. That almost certainly meant cannibalism. Afterwards, the cannibals smashed open her skull to eat her brain and then ate her tongue, cheeks, and leg muscles. The fort itself fell into near collapse as men tore down houses for firewood, ripped gates from hinges, and holes opened in the fort's wall. In May 1610, Governor Gates made his way from Bermuda to the colony on makeshift ships made from wood found on Bermuda. Finding only 60 survivors at Jamestown, he ordered them to abandon the settlement, but not to burn it. As they neared the coast, they met a fleet led by English merchant Lord Delaware with fresh supplies and new colonists. Restored, they returned to Jamestown and repaired the fort. The state of Delaware would later be named in honor of Delaware, and with that, the starving time ended, though trouble remained far from over. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.